Hi everyone, my name is Janelle, and we have Byron, my husband, here, and we are on Wednesday in the week of hope. So today we have Jeremiah 29:11 through 14, and this is in the NIV version. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Then you will call on me and come and pray to me, and I'll listen to you. You will seek me and find me when you seek me with all your heart. I'll be found by you, declares the Lord, and will bring you back from captivity. I will gather you from all the nations and places where I have banished you, declares the Lord, and I will bring you back to the place which I carried you into exile, from which I carried you into exile. So the very first verse, verse 11, is taken out of context constantly. And people use it to say, oh, God's going to give this to me or do this thing for me, which is true. God does promise us things and come through with things. But this is a verse where it's really important to take out of context, because when you look at what is he saying next, God is telling this to his people before they're going into 70 years of captivity. And we were talking about this, and so I'm 35, and I was like, oh, I would be dead. I would be dead in captivity before we came out. And yet God's saying, no, like, I haven't forgotten about you. I do have plans for you. I have good plans for you, and they're going to come out for the whole nation, right? Not necessarily for each person individual, but for that nation. And so we're saying, I'm like, this is kind of a hard verse. The first one starts out really good. You feel good about it. You're like, oh, yes, thank you, God. You do have good plans for me. And then you keep going, and it's like, oh my goodness, like, yeah, you're going to find me. You're going to, I'm going to bring you back, all these things, but I'm going to bring you back from captivity. You're going to come back from the place I banished you. Those are not words I want surrounding myself, And actually, as I was reading it, I was reminded of this. I felt like God spoke this to me when I was like 18. And I talked about this, I don't remember if it was last week or the week before, but where I was like, I'm not super patient. So when God says something to me, I'm like, okay, so this is like tomorrow, an hour from now, when is this going to But I know that there's stuff that's coming into fruition. But looking back, I also know that there was a lot I needed to grow in and learn to even be where I am right now.
Right.
Like, if I had been put in the position I am now, when I wanted to be put in this position, I believe I would have failed because I wasn't ready, And I think those are the places where not only did I have to continue to trust God and step into things that I didn't feel good about or feel comfortable with or even see the point of sometimes, but I grew in those places and I had hope that the things that God told me were true.
Yeah, totally. Well, as we're just reading this, it just came to me that this is totally has prodigal son vibes
Mm,
to me. As you read it, it's like this nation leading into this captivity, they're being disciplined, like
mm-hmm,
they are not seeking the Lord.
mm-hmm,
And so after going through this, it's saying, you will seek me with all
mm-hmm,
your heart.
mm-hmm,
And so like they're finally at that point where they're like in their despair because of the results of what they've done. And we find ourselves in that in our own lives. It's like when I have not been seeking God, or
mm-hmm,
I know, oh, and it's like, okay, now I'm making that turning point and I'm going to seek God with all of my heart. And when you do, I will be found by you and bring you back from your captivity. What is
mm-hmm,
the captivity today? It could be just like my cell phone addiction or like my like just the things I try to seek in the world to fulfill that thing. Then God's
mm-hmm,
going to break that captivity.
mm-hmm,
And they are the prodigal son as a nation to come back, but then individually,
mm-hmm,
now each one of us can come back from the captivity we're finding ourselves in
mm-hmm.
when we seek him with all our heart and let go of all that stuff.
Well, and that also, like, thinking about that idea that God, has good plans for you.
Mm-hmm.
When we're seeking other things other than God, or when we're distracted by stuff or whatever we're doing, we aren't going to be able to step into those plans. I was talking to a friend about this, where there have been a few years where it's not been easy for me at all. But I just kept showing up. And I felt like the lesson God was like getting at for me was like, you aren't doing this for other people. You aren't doing this for anyone. You're doing this for me. And when you show up for me every day. So if people are pointing their fingers at you or saying things about you, or if you're going through a difficult circumstance, or you don't even see the benefit of the activity you're doing, like I would sit down and be like, okay, I'm going to do a short devotion every day. But it's like, I'm not having this mind-blowing experience every day,
Right.
But God's like, no, like every day seek me. Every day continue to show up with your best foot forward. And I was able to step into the plans God had for me because of showing up in stuff that I wasn't even seeing like the purpose in. And I think a lot of times that hope is like you can step out of that captivity of sin, but then you can also step into that discipline that can allow you to see the fruit of God's work in your life.
Prosperity. Then.
Yeah. And then prosperity based off of your discipline and submission to the Lord.
Totally.
Yeah.
We did. That was good.
Okay. Well, that is Wednesday. We will see you guys tomorrow.